that make a mineral, and we've learned our acronym to help us remember them, and now we'll talk about the 3 ways that minerals can be formed. So quickly, there are 3 main ways that a mineral can form. They can form organically. I know this seems to go against what we talked about yesterday, but I'll explain why this is still okay. They can also form from cooling magma or lava, and finally they can form from solutions. So let's talk about each one of these in order. So first up, minerals can form organically. It should say organically on the slide. So we know that a mineral has to be able to be formed without the remains of living things. So minerals are allowed to form through an organic process, right, from a living thing, as long as that's not the only way the mineral can form. That's why coal is not a mineral, because that's the only way coal can form is from the remains of dead plants and animals. But things like limestones, calcium carbonate, these are minerals that clams, oysters, corals, and other shellfish use to make their shells. So when they pull these minerals out of the seawater and create their shells, these skeletons and shells will remain when they die and can get compacted together to make new rock. So we would definitely consider these to be minerals because that's not the only way that they can form. Right? These minerals can also be formed in other ways. All right, our next way that we can get a mineral is from cooling magma or lava. And we're going to talk about each one quickly. Right? So mineral crystals can form from both of these when the molten rock cools and the mineral crystals form. Right? Magma is at its core just melted minerals, not dissolved minerals. It's melted minerals. They're so hot that they're no longer a solid, they're now a liquid. So when that magma cools, it goes back to being a solid, we would now consider those minerals again. But they form a little bit differently in 2 different ways. So if it's magma, we're going to get, it's going to remain deep below the surface and cool slowly over thousands of years. And this slow cooling will lead to the formation of large crystals. So magma will lead to large crystals, right, because it cools slowly. And we saw that in our lab today. If you haven't done the lab yet, you'll see it in the lab tomorrow, right? Then when something cools slowly, it gives more time for the crystals to add on, and we form new large crystals. With lava, however, the closer the magma is to the surface, the faster it's going to cool, and there's not enough time to form those large crystals. And so crystals found in hardened rock made from lava, I should say hardened rock made from lava, are going to be much smaller. Right? So something like this basalt here, the crystals are going to be much smaller than in a granite that cools underground. So that's magma and lava, pretty straightforward. The magma and lava cool, minerals can form. Our last one is solutions, and this is definitely the trickiest of the 3, but it's not super tough, and we're going to do a lab with it in class. So a solution in general is a mixture where one substance is dissolved in another. So salt water is a solution. Salt is dissolved in water. It turns out, though, you can get other minerals to dissolve in water as well, not just salt. Right? And if that water leaves for whatever reason, the mineral will get left behind and will form crystals. And ultimately, you'll get a mineral. Excuse me. So there are 2 ways that you can have minerals form from solutions. The first is from evaporation. All right? So again, to get the mineral to form, we need the water to go away. So with evaporation, right, if the water evaporates and turns into a gas, the mineral will be left behind. So halite, which is the mineral name for salt, will form from the evaporation of ocean water over millions of years. And you guys can ignore the underlines here. It's left over from an earlier year. I will remove those so that they're not confusing. All right, our next one is a hot water solution. And this is the one we're going to do a lab on in class because it can be a little more confusing. But remember, we've said that hot things in general have more energy. Right? So if water is heated up, it's got more energy, it can dissolve more minerals in it. But if that water cools, the large amounts of minerals that were able to be dissolved in the hot water are no longer able to be dissolved in the cold water. And so those minerals will start to form crystals and form solid minerals wherever that water is. And these hot water solutions can lead to some pretty cool stuff underground. First thing you can get is something called a vein. All right, so these are two things that are made from a hot water solution. So we'll kind of leave that as our main idea because these form from that. So a vein is a narrow kind of crack in the rock that's very different from the surrounding rock, right? And this forms when a hot water solution flowed into this crack and cooled. As it cooled, the minerals that were dissolved in it filled the crack, usually with quartz. So this is very similar to a dike or a sill that we learned about with volcanoes, but instead of magma filling the crack, it's hot water that fills the crack. And as that water cools, the minerals dissolved in it fill up the crack with minerals. Our next and last thing that we get from a hot water solution is a geode. Right? These are super, super pretty, and they form when a hollow rock gets filled with water containing minerals, and then as that water cools or the rock dries out, the minerals are going to crystallize and fill up the inside of that cavity, and you'll get a geode. They end up looking really, really pretty if you were able to find them and cut them open. Those are all our notes for tonight. Make sure we have 3 questions about how minerals form. We'll go over those tomorrow and set up our lab where we're going to form water, or minerals rather, from a hot water solution. Have a good night.